It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbing Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchendu. Thanks a lot for joining us. Very, very, very eventful week we've had in the nation this past week. A lot's happened, bringing up a lot of questions around the Constitution and, of course, the rights of Nigerians, both those in government and the average citizen. The Rivers State scenario has been probably at the top of the news in the past week, with the president suspending the governor and the National Assembly and installing an administrator to run the affairs of Rivers State for the next 6 months. We are also still following the issue in the Senate with Senator Natasha Akpoti-Oduaghan and her suspension, which has continued to make people question the rights that she has, to being heard. There was insinuations, at least visuals, of her being recalled by her constituency. We still don't know what the end of that is. And of course, the NYSC was also in focus. We had a Nigerian young lady who did complain about the state of the nation, and certain warnings were issued, and there was supposed to be a hearing and investigation. So a lot has happened this past week, and that's what we're going to be starting the show off with today, joined here by Peter Aka and Inebehe Effiong. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
It's a pleasure being here.
I think we have to start with Rivers State, because everybody's, there's a lot being talked about. We did hear one of our former presidents, Goodluck Jonathan, even come out and talk about, give his own opinion on that.
Yeah.
But the Attorney General of the Federation and the government, I guess, are standing by their move, saying that suspension is within the powers of the executive. There's a counter-argument about the president not having the powers to suspend an elected official in the country. Are we in a constitutional crisis, you think?
Thank you very much for having me. Whether constitutional crisis or not, what I want to say is that there is a dangerous level of ignorance amongst Nigerians. And this ignorance is not just about the educated, the illiterate folks. It's more with the educated. What we are seeing in Nigeria today is a deliberate attempt to convert the entire state into a one-party state. And Nigerians are gleefully, applauding it into its full implementation. I believe in strong leadership. And if we want to address the issues in Rivers State, you must go to the root cause of the problem. Any other thing you're doing is addressing a symptom and leaving the cause. What is the root cause of the problem in Rivers State? A man who was a former governor, who had the opportunity to be former chairman, former chief of staff, became governor, believes he has had so much power to the extent that he boasted on TV in 2023 that he single-handedly purchased forms for everybody who contested election in Rivers State under PDP in 2023. And so, having installed the government that is there, he has a right to dictate how the government runs. So right now, instead of us paying attention to why should one person be able to install a government, do Rivers people not have the capacity to pick a governor? So the problem that led us here is a failed and corrupt electoral system. Until you fix that system that empowers one person to be able to boast and tell you that I have installed a government or a puppet, then you are going to be going around in circles. And before you know, another election cycle comes, they do what they're able to do, and then we continue protesting and talking about this.
Yeah, but I mean, the government's argument is, and those who are in support of the president's actions say that whatever the arguments of, the symptoms and all of that are, this is the chief executive of the state. The state has been in chaos for a couple of years now. We've all watched it play out over time, and the buck stops at his table. So he has to take the fall for it. There are people who have said, why is the minister of the FCT not being called, not being penalized as well on some level? Is that argument worth anything?
Thank you for having me. If we say the state has been in chaos, one may be inclined to seek interpretation on what the word chaos means. But by my own estimation, the crisis in Rivers State is an artificial crisis. It is one that is precipitated by a man who I once described, I think on this same Channels TV, or a sister station, where I said that he's suffering from chronic God complex. That is Nyesom Wike. Now, if you look at what has been playing out, it is obvious that this is like the comrade said, my brother said, this is about control of the resources and the governance of the state. But what is painful to me as a Nigerian, And what makes my heart bleed is the very indefensible and outrageous actions of the president of this country. Elections have come and gone. There were disputations regarding how Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu assumed the office of the president, including how even Governor Sim Fubara became governor. Those contestations were fought up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court affirmed the elections of both of them. Now, if you are saying that you are declaring a state of emergency in a state, and that on the basis of that emergency, you have now removed, people say, oh, it is suspended. No. Cessation of office, whether that removal is permanent or temporal is a different thing. But once someone has seized or is denied the power to exercise the functions of an office, that person is removed from that office, whether permanently or temporarily. Now, in terms of Rivers State, I argue that there is no basis under the Constitution for the president to declare a state of emergency. That is the first argument we have to resolve.
Why is that?
Because Section 305, that has now been quoted by all Nigerians, is not ambiguous. It is not confusing. There is clarity in the wordings on the circumstances that must exist before a state of emergency can be declared. I'll quickly just highlight them. Number one, if the Federation is at war, I'm not aware that Nigeria is at war with any foreign country. If the Nigeria is being invaded, there's an invasion of the country, the president can declare a state of emergency. If there is the Constitution uses the word actual breakdown of law and order. And you see, breakdown of law and order here is not when Agberos at Obalende are changing blows, and they begin to carry machete and pursue one another. No! The breakdown of law and order that is envisaged by the Constitution has to be such a proportion, such a dimension that extraordinary measures are required to immediately restore order. Now, when you are even declaring state of emergency, you cannot declare state of emergency in an entire state if the breakdown of law and order is not in the entire state, or is not such that has made governance in that state impossible. Now, it also says if there is imminent breakdown of law and order or natural disaster. Now, what is the law that has broken down in Rivers State? Because the breakdown of law and order here is not disagreement between organs of government on how to discharge their functions. It has to do with threat to life. It has to do with people being killed, properties being burnt. To the best of my knowledge, there was no basis to declare state of emergency. They said, oh, a pipeline was blown. Even as I'm talking to you, that pipeline has been fixed from media reports. But what has that got to do with the office of governor of Rivers State? And as I said, for you, and what was the emergency? When did the emergency arise? Now, assuming without conceding, for argument's sake, that there was even a basis to declare, I have argued that there is none. Can you remove a governor who is elected just like you? Because under the Constitution, Nigeria, Section 2, Nigeria is a federation consisting of states and the Federal Capital Territory. The governor is the head of a federating unit. He's elected just like the president. The governor by Section 180, read community reading along with Section 189, cannot cease to hold office except he dies, he resigns, is impeached, or he becomes permanently incapacitated.
Sorry to cut you in there, because I know you're a lawyer, and I just wanted to lay a few things out, just as the counter-arguments that I have been seeing from people. There's the talk of what President Obasanjo did in the past.
Yes.
There's the talk of what President Jonathan has done in the past as well. There's an act that nobody knows whether a bill that nobody knows whether it became law in 2018. All of these things keep coming up. You mentioned the pipelines being bombed there, and there's the arguments about how it affects Nigeria's resources and Nigeria's income. That is a powerhouse of our country, whether we like it or not. And that directly could be interpreted to mean a breakdown of law and order. Don't these arguments mean anything?
No, it doesn't hold water. It is an argument hanging in the sky. Because, to begin with, if you are going to use pipeline vandalization as an excuse to declare a state of emergency, I personally find the argument about whether the president can suspend a governor or not offensive. It is an argument that should never even be put forward. But whether there is a basis to declare a state of emergency, if it is pipeline vandalization, why is governor of Bayelsa State still in office? Because just a few days after, a pipeline was blown in Bayelsa. Since this president became president, Nigeria has lost billions, if not trillions, due to vandalization of oil installations and due to the theft of oil in the Niger Delta. Why has the president not declared state of emergency to remove? And by the way, does the governor control the pipeline? Is the governor the appointer of the Inspector General of Police? Is it the appointer of the Chief of Naval Staff? Is it the governor that awarded pipeline protection contract to Tombolo and others? So this is an excuse that the president has manufactured in his head. And let us be more serious. Even if you are saying that because there is an insecurity in a state, you want to remove the governor. Mr. Ebuka, as I'm talking to you, people are fleeing their homes in their thousands in those states. The president has not declared state of emergency. As I'm talking to you, there is crisis in Osun State, communal crisis where people are running everywhere. The president hasn't even come out to say anything. In the north, people are being slaughtered. So if it is that once there's insecurity, you must remove the chief executive officer, Tinubu himself should no longer be president.
How do we get out of this? Because, like we've seen, the executive is not shifting ground. The Attorney General has said what he said, and it looks like this 6 months is going to hold. The administrator has taken office. And maybe a follow-up question. Yes, the president is accountable for his actions, but there's also been the argument about the opposition in all of this. We saw what happened in the Senate and the House of Representatives with the voice votes, which a lot of people have, said makes no sense in a situation like this. There's also the governors who are directly affected by this. It could be anybody next. We've already seen insinuations about some other people that might be on the chopping block with this, especially the opposition governors. What were the expectations from them? And is it too late for them to, I don't know, do something?
It is almost a little too late. And when you talk about politicians, you can almost expect no pushback from them. It is a beautiful question you have asked. As it is now, the question is, what do we do moving forward? If you bring APC lawyers to this platform, they will rationalize why what the president did is correct. If you bring other normal right-thinking persons, the NBA have even criticized it. But in all of it, the administrator is seated in Rivers Government House now. The suspension will hold. If institutions of democracy were working, the National Assembly should have been the stopgap measure for it. But of course, that institution does not even work as an institution to carry out oversight. It is an extension of the executive. That is what the principal officers, they believe. The question to Nigerians should be asking themselves is, at what point are you able to now put yourself in the conversation? Because what we are discussing, some people say it is agreement between two Godfather and Godson. It is, for example, two criminals discussing how you want to steal or share something that does not belong to you. So you want to take. We are talking about Rivers State Commonwealth. So the people of Rivers State, what is their stake in this? And that is why I'm telling you that has only to do with electoral reform. If not for INEC and the judiciary, a lot of persons who are in the National Assembly will not be there today. If not for INEC and the judiciary, will the Rivers State governor be the governor today? So Nigerians will pay attention to the root cause of the problem, which will mean demanding electoral reform, because what you are seeing now will be played across different states. Tinubu has nothing to lose in Rivers State. The weaker the two parties are, the better for him. Look at Kano, where there is an opposition governor. You have a high court emir, you have an appeal, a federal high court emir, state high court emir. Everywhere there is an opposition, a stone is being thrown to weaken. Before you know, every institution of state will be controlled by one person or one man, and nothing will be done. The only means of accountability is INEC. INEC is the weapon fashioned against Nigerians. The day you realize that, the day Nigerians will begin to move forward. Other than that, we will wait for another problem. We come, we discuss, dissect, and what the president wants to do will be realized.
But the INEC, as it's set up now, can almost not be independent. Even though the I is what the I stands for. We see that, we've seen what happens. The president sort of still appoints. The head of the INEC, they are supposed to be independent. But we hear all of these stories and we see how things play out. How does that work? How does this reform work with the National Assembly that you're saying Nigerians don't have a lot of faith in anymore?
Nigerians do not have strong men. They have weak men who are enabled by the docility of the people. Nigerians have failed to realize the importance of the electoral system. What is the definition of a democracy? We have been living in an alternate reality. The simple definition of democracy is a government where power is vested in the people. Mr. Ebuka, Nigeria has not been able to get an electoral process where people can choose their leaders. And we keep calling ourselves a democracy, which is a fallacy. Nigerians must put maximum civil pressure on the authorities to do what they need to do to reform INEC. And it is even a challenge to Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I am putting a challenge. You are a Democrat. Forget about people who say you should leave your government or your government nobody wants. No, be president. But let the president come out and make a statement telling Nigerians that I believe in democracy and I am committing to free, fair, credible elections in 2027. And beginning today, I will begin that process. Move that challenge to the Senate President, move it to the Speaker House of Reps, and let Nigerian youths and all other Nigerians begin to sing that song. And let us see. Or does the president not, as a Democrat, not like free and fair elections? It is Nigerians that must ensure. Nigerians must put pressure. Every day the Senate President will come and say we are Democrats. Why Democrats no come like free and fair elections? Why? Do you have issues with it? Are you afraid that if there are free, fair, peaceful elections, you may not be in office? Let the president take up this challenge and commit to free and fair elections. Let us see truly the sincerity of your peoples as a leader in a democracy. Other than that, if he fails to do so, it is up to Nigerians to put the pressure and get what they need in the best interest of all of us.
You know, the River State situation has put the three arms of government in full focus.
Yes.
The executive is, of course, at the center of this. Everybody, like he said, expected the National Assembly to be the stopgap. That happened very swiftly,
yes.
You know, quicker than most people thought. The judiciary, of course, is there as well. We saw the judgment with the House of Assembly drama that has gone on in River State for so long. There's been judgments after judgment. There's been injunction after. There's so many things that's happened in River State people can't even keep up with. Even with what happened with President Obasanjo in the past when he declared a state of emergency in Plateau State, I believe. There was a supposed precedent that people thought had been set with that. What does it say that in 2025, none of this matters? You know, at a time when the judiciary, people are starting to wonder, are they really the last bastion of hope for people? You know, and we have a time now where people are wondering, is that where we should look to? If these precedents are there, if these judgments are coming every other day, sometimes conflicting, what's left?
Well, the Nigerian judiciary is the Nigerian judiciary. It is not an American judiciary. It is not Congolese judiciary. It is not Zimbabwean judiciary. Judiciary existing in Nigeria is a reflection of the Nigerian society. Now, if you look at what has happened in Rivers State, let's even start from Parliament. I personally am not surprised. You have a man at the Senate who is the former governor of my state. I always say I can write a book in volumes about Godswill Akpabio. I don't want to discuss him today. But you have a National Assembly that almost all their members stood on their feet singing, "On your mandate,
we shall stand.
Under your mandate, Bola, on your they are standing on Tinubu's mandate. The question is, what is that mandate? I had asked on this same TV station. Is it a mandate of corruption? Is it a mandate of accountability? Is it a mandate to ensure that we have stable electricity? They are still standing on Tinubu's mandate. You know what makes this laughable? The Senate President is a lawyer. A senior lawyer for that matter. Section 11 of the Constitution is clear that where a House of Assembly cannot perform its legislative responsibilities, the National Assembly has the power, temporarily, to assume the legislative functions of the House of Assembly. But guess what, Mr. Ebuka? That same Section 11 says that where that is the case, they shall not have power to remove the governor or deputy governor. So assuming that the argument is even that the Rivers State House of Assembly is unable to function, okay, and National Assembly is to intervene, the Constitution says they cannot remove the governor. Now, guess what again? The administrator, sole administrator, I don't even know. I saw I don't know, because I mean, you are in entertainment, you are a big shot in entertainment. I did not see you. I know you are not a comedian, but I did not see all the Sabinos and the others in the villa when Tinubu was carrying out that comic display in the name of swearing in a sole administrator. You say you are swearing him in. With which constitution? Which oath of office? Because under the Constitution.
And he took office before the National Assembly. Even.
Before the National, he swore in on the same day.
Of course, it was predetermined. But I'm saying, which oath did he subscribe to? Is there enough oath for sole administrator under our Constitution? And you are saying, they have even now released, from what I read, about 400 billion that was withheld based on the judgment of the Supreme Court. Because you mentioned the judiciary. Supreme Court says that because the governor did not recognize the Amawele-led house, did not present the budget to them, therefore there is justification to withhold Rivers State allocation. Now, Tinubu, in his broadcast to Nigerians, said that Fubara did not implement the decision of the Supreme Court. But in you now, wanting to claim you want to obey the Constitution, you have gone ahead to remove the governor, remove the deputy governor, remove the house. You are now releasing the budget
that Speaker of State should be withheld because there was no House of Assembly to a sole administrator after you have dissolved the same House of Assembly. So you see how they are making a mockery of our country. And Section 120 and 121 is clear that 1 kobo of the resources of a state cannot be appropriated, cannot be used without what is called an appropriation law. This Vice Admiral Ibok that has now been appointed as sole administrator, which budget is he going to implement with the money that has been released to him? This is an illegality that has been cooked in the villa, and I will even say it is a coup against the government of Rivers State. Because the very idea of saying that you are suspending a House of Assembly of a state, you are suspending a governor of a state, is unheard of. It is totally unacceptable. There is no legal argument that can support this. And in any event, the governor has 4 years. He cannot be denied 1 hour of that 4 years, except for the circumstances that are earlier highlighted. So who is the president to say that he can sit in a villa, make a broadcast, and remove the governor? What stops Tinubu tomorrow from suspending the 36 state governors? All he needs to do is to manufacture a non-existent excuse. And that is why the Nigerian Bar Association, which I am a member, the current leadership led by Famosi Igwe SN, has rightly deprecated what has happened. And I pray that the courts will intervene. Finally, when this happened in Plateau State, because you mentioned Plateau in 2004, people are saying, oh, Obasanjo did it. Who is Obasanjo? A military general? Who did he appoint? General Chris Ali, that was appointed in Plateau State. Ebuka, I want you to ask those who are listening, why is it that when a sole administrator is appointed, there's always someone with a military background? Because the very idea of appointing a sole administrator in a democracy is a product of the military. It's a product of dictatorship. Now, when that matter went to the Supreme Court, unfortunately, the Supreme Court lost an opportunity to pronounce on it on technical grounds, saying that as at the time Dariye brought that action, or authorized the bringing of that action, the man who was sole administrator did not give consent to it. That is why Fubara cannot go to the Supreme Court. But why has Fubara not gone to the Federal High Court to challenge it? Because it looks like we're even crying more than they bereave. I look at him today, coming out of the church in Port Harcourt. He's still smiling, wearing white. In his broadcast, he was still saying, in his statement, he was still saying, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, Tinubu has removed you from office. Fubara should become a man and begin to speak like a governor of a state. And it is very embarrassing that the 36 state governors are now becoming poets. They issued gave Nigerians poetry to read, that they cannot intervene in a partisan matter. The SASAD governors are divided. It shows you what we call complete state capture. That all institutions in our country today have been viciously captured. That you cannot find a single person, a single institution that is able to stand up and reprimand this president for what he has done. And when Nigerians went to protest during the End Bad Governance, they were charged for treason, for carrying Russian flag. And some of them were asking the military to take over. So Tinubu has handed over Rivers State to the military. Because the man that is sole administrator is a member of the military, even though he has resigned. And look at the man. He says he wants to restore law and order. Before he was appointed, were schools on fire? Were churches not functioning in Rivers State? Were civil servants not going to work? What is the law and order that you want to restore? This is an illegality that Tinubu has bettered. And Nigerians have a responsibility to oppose it.
You were going to say?
I just wanted to add, because he said that Fubara has to be a man. You can only be a man when you are born legitimately and then you grow through the developmental stages. If somebody brings you out of nowhere and becomes something, then you become, obliged to him. And that is the problem in Rivers State. A lot of persons do not feel that they should come out. Have you seen Rivers State people protesting? You should ask that question. A lot of persons feel that they are not beholden to this government. We don't have a hand in your emergence. So there is nothing we will do about it. It is your fight. Fight it. And then if you expect Fubara to go to the High Court, with all due respect to the lawyer here, Nigeria does not have a judiciary that is an independent arm of a democratic government.
That was why I asked him this.
What Nigeria has is the legal department of every government in power. That is what Nigeria has. Nigeria's judiciary is not the last hope of the common man. It is the last hope of the uncommon man. An institution that should protect everybody, no matter your class or status, has now been weaponized against the people. And only the people of Nigeria, because guess what? If you think this problem is just about Rivers State, you are being ridiculous. You are just making a joke because they test it somewhere. If you want to see what state's capture look like, you can look at Lagos State, where there is no meaningful opposition. A senator in Nigeria, Senator Ireti Kingigbe in Abuja, on a rise during the Natasha Bruhaha, told the nation on TV that the National Assembly is not opposition friendly. A National Assembly that should perform oversight. Imagine a democracy without opposition. If you do not fix an electoral system to be able to hold these people accountable, wait for 2027 and see how wild this race gets.
So from what all of you are saying, right, the legislature is gone.
It's gone.
Captured.
The judiciary is also not
Captured.
necessarily standing on 2 feet. The people need to do something.
Yes.
But the people are also worried, right? Like I said at the start of this show, we saw the youth copper who put up a TikTok, I believe,
Yes.
talking about her own experience of
Cost of
Nigeria,
living and-
which a lot of people related to. And we saw what unfolded after that.
Yes.
She was called in for questioning. There were threats to her. There was even talk about killing her. I saw a tweet to that effect, you know. When people see that, what do you expect them to do in a nation where there's no recourse in courts, like you're saying?
Yeah.
What then is the next move?
The power of the people must be greater than the people in power. In fact, the coppers' situation was even mild. We had an issue on October 20th, 2020, where live arms were fired at peaceful Nigerians who were holding their country's flag and singing the anthem seated on the floor. So Nigerians have every reason to have political apathy, where people become disenfranchised and do not want to participate. But what is the other option? If you keep quiet, you die. If you talk, you are going to die. Nigerians are dying without protesting. People are protesting in Akure now, as he rightly said. In Adamawa, in Yobe State, 3 soldiers were executed in point blank by bandits or by terrorists. Nigerians must find the courage and the wisdom to strategically fight and build a nation that they want, because it will not happen by chance. Every nation that is built today was built by resilience. If you think that, oh, by keeping quiet, that is the plan of the state actors. They want everybody to cow in. You cannot talk. If you talk, they come after you. If every Nigerian, including prominent people who mean well, come out every day, 1 million people, and continue to talk about what is wrong with the government, there are not enough prisons to put everybody. You cannot kill everybody. You want to kill everybody and rule over their ashes or the dead of their bodies. Nigerians must find the courage. That National Assembly, we will go there and exercise our right to peaceful assembly and demand electoral reform from people who are there who call themselves Democrats. You like election, you like free and fair, you are Democrats. You will give it to us. When we are ready, with time, it will happen.
How does this happen?
It is very difficult. Let me even comment on the riot, the co-members matter.
Yeah.
So far, the NYC seems to have retreated. I'm in contact with her. She had briefed me to represent her. I'm hoping that their retreating will be permanent. We don't want to hear their voice on this matter. If NYC has any concern on what Raya has said, they should talk to their DG, the member of the executive arm of government, to whisper to President Tinubu to address the situation that Nigeria has found itself. But if the NYC tries to meddle in this matter, they will only be trying to incite core members to react in a way that they don't preempt, that they cannot preempt. Because there is nothing in the bylaws of the NYC, there is nothing in the NYC Act that empowers the NYC to have even intervened in that matter. A core member is not an employee of the government. A core member is not a civil servant. The NYC is not a military nor a paramilitary organization, contrary to the misconception of some people. The NYC Act, if you look at the Act itself, is only a scheme that was introduced in 1973 to allow Nigerians to serve their country. Nobody is issued letter of employment by the NYC. You are supposed to be thanked. In fact, what Riot did is an act of national service. So what she deserves is an award. But regarding how Nigerians should take back their country, we have to take it back on the streets. This is not a battle that we are going to win in the courts, unfortunately. Because the judiciary is also limited in terms of what they can do.
But that's what the government's always worried about when you talk about the streets now. Because
the
worry is always, what does it become?
Yes.
Which is why, I guess, from the government's perspective, it's always halted before it starts.
When President Tinubu was in the streets, what was his worry? Was he afraid? This president today, when they were in the opposition, it sickens me that this party, APC, that came to power through protests, you recall the Occupy Nigeria movement, the role that they played. Suddenly today, protest has become a treasonable act. This is our country. We cannot run away. How do you live in a country where you have a president, you have a first lady, you have the first son, you have the first daughter? The one family has basically... Have you not seen videos of Seyi Tinubu being given preference over ministers? Mr. Ebuka, in which serious country do you permit that? Have you seen the convoy that Seyi Tinubu moves around? Have you seen the convoy of the president and the Senate president? These people are taking us for a ride. They believe Nigerians are conquered people. It is left for us
to determine whether we will permit this or not. But we have to begin to demand systemic and drastic changes in the way things are done. And it is because they are not afraid, Ebuka. They claim that they have approved the so-called emergency. The constitution says you need 2/3. Mr. Ebuka, there is no journalist in Nigeria, nobody in Nigeria today can give you the number of senators that voted in favor of the emergency. Why? Because it was by voice vote. How do you determine 2/3 by voice? People just screaming, yeah, a year. How do you determine 2/3 of that? How do you determine 2/3 by voice? It has to be by head count. So the National Assembly embarrassed itself. The National Assembly has abdicated its responsibility, and that is why I say that what we have now is a case of parliamentary redundancy. They have become redundant. They no longer realize the responsibilities that they have, and it is painful because when the military struck, only the judiciary was preserved. Normally, they will dissolve the executive, dissolve the legislature, and now use auster clauses to limit the powers of our courts. But the judiciary is always standing. But these lawmakers, so-called lawmakers, that are saying that on Tinubu's mandate they must stand, they did not even have the decency to allow for a head count, to even say, oh, we want to legitimize the legality. The fact that there was no head count, that we cannot say how many members of the House of Reps voted for the emergency, we cannot say how many senators voted, it shows you how decayed, it shows you how flawed our governance system is. And that is why the people must make up their minds whether they want to live as slaves or they want to live as citizens. Because what is happening today, quite sadly, is looking at as if Nigerians are being treated as slaves in their own country. And it pains me that you couldn't have even one senator, not even the Senate minority leader, not the minority whip, not even one. The Syria Dixon, former governor Bayelsa, that even tried to speak. He had to work out with Baribe and others. Opposition is dead in the National Assembly. Opposition is dead in our country. The same thing in the House of Reps. It is very shameful. It is very shameful that this is the situation that we have found ourselves. And I want to disagree with him. Tinubu is not a Democrat. You know, in mass communication, there is what we call proper labeling. I don't know where Tinubu said he's a Democrat. If he had claimed to be a Democrat in the past, his assumption of office as president and his actions has shown that contrary to what he has said, this is a full dictatorship. So they are not pretending to be Democrats. They know they are not Democrats. Tinubu himself knows that he's not a Democrat. No Democrat will wake up and say, you are removing a democratically elected governor from office.
All right.
Well,
we have 30 seconds.
The challenge is up to President Tinubu. Nigerians must know that INEC is the weapon fashioned against you. If we fail to reform INEC and the electoral process, we have failed to reform anything. That is our first line of accountability. President Tinubu, I want to believe that you are a Democrat. Commit to conducting free, fair, and credible elections, and then pass the challenge to the National Assembly, the Senate, and the House Speaker. If they fail to do so, Nigerians must get ready to exert the necessary civil pressure and ensure that you reform your electoral process. Other than that, these shenanigans will continue. There is no solution. We are addressing symptoms and leaving cause of problem.
Thank you very much, Peter Aka. Thank you very much, Inebe Effiong. This is probably the least I've spoken on a segment of this show. Thanks for enlightening us and speaking the minds of a lot of Nigerians. And we'll keep looking at the government and all the arms of government to step up. Don't just stand there teasing me.